Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. On behalf of the Athena Film Festival at Barnard College, Women in Hollywood, I am very excited to welcome you to the 11th annual Athena Film Festival. Our festival is dedicated to celebrating the stories of bold, courageous women leaders and the filmmakers who bring these stories to life. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Corey Luco, and I am a programmer and operations assistant here with the festival. This year's Festa would not be possible without the support of our dedicated sponsors. So please, everybody, join me in thanking the Athena's founding sponsor, the Artemis Rising Foundation, and its CEO and founder, Regina K. Scully, whose leadership is the reason that this festival is possible. Also, a special thank you to our premier level sponsor, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, which shares our commitment to showcasing stories of women in science. And the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation is sponsoring this shorts program, as well as this program area, Making It Happen, Women in STEM. To all our other sponsors whose names you will see before each film and event, thank you again for your commitment to challenging our culture to be more inclusive and inspiring our audiences in the process. This past year has been a wake-up call, and when we were thinking about how we wanted to curate this year's festival, we realized we really wanted to make different program areas that react and respond to these past 12 months. And so that is exactly what we did. This shorts program is part of our Making It Happen Women in STEM program area. And in this program area, we tell the stories of fierce and fearless women leaders working in STEM. We'll see the discoveries they make, the challenges they face, and when they uncover the truth about the world and break down social barriers in the process. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to welcome these amazing filmmakers. I'm going to have them go around and introduce themselves and tell you what film they're from and what they did on the film. So Sharon, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Sharon Shattuck, and I'm the director of the short film, The Scientists versus Dartmouth.
Wonderful. Claire?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Anne-Claire Jolin. I'm the director of the film Fine Particle.
Wonderful. Ellie?
Hi everybody. My name is Ellie. I am the director of The Misfits.
Wonderful. So thank you all so much for being here. We've all just watched your incredible films, and so we're very excited to talk with you. This is a question for everyone. I just am very interested in how you came to these stories. Some of them are narrative. Claire's is a narrative. Some are documentary. But I would love to just hear about your journey to finding these subjects or finding the story and why you wanted to tell it. Sharon, you want to start off?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I'm in a cabin in the woods, so I hope my internet's okay.
I can hear you all good.
Okay, awesome. So The Scientists versus Dartmouth. The story first came to me because I just finished a feature film last year called Picture a Scientist.
Also playing at the festival.
Also at the festival.
So check it out.
It features, several women filmmakers experiencing gender bias and overcoming it in different ways. And so we actually interviewed the Dartmouth women as part of that project. We were considering, if we could sort of work that into the larger feature film. And then I think we just realized this is its own story and it's really complicated. And it's really powerful what they did. Just the fact that they're these young women who put themselves out there in such a vulnerable position, like their early career, and it's, they don't have tenure, it's just a really powerful story. And so I decided to just make a separate short film about just that story.
Wonderful. Yeah. I love when you come to a story and you realize this speaks for itself. It needs to be told by itself. I think
exactly.
That's really powerful. Wonderful. Claire, you have the narrative of the bunch. So
okay. It has been sorry for my English. I have been speaking English not for a long time.
Oh, so no worries. Your English is wonderful.
Yes, it's a bit weird, but I have been working on this story for quite a long time because it was a feature film that I put it into a short film when I was in La Fémis in Paris, and it was for me the important was to talk about a kind of a toxic relationship between a mother and the daughter, and the fact that the mother actually what she's good at in her job, she can't really do it with her kid. It's like she's very, very, very good at it. Actually, my mother is a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
She's, I think, really good in her job, but she's really bad with like her kids, or I don't know, in her relationships, you know.
Yeah.
But she's a really good when she's like very competent when she works. So that's why I created this dysfunction between like a mother and her daughter, and like she really knows to do it, to deal with people when she works in the hospital, but not when she is with a kid.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. I loved being able to see that, you know, complicated home life of this person who, you know, spends her life taking care of other people, but then obviously has to navigate all of that with her own child as well. So we'll touch more on that later on in the talk. But Ellie, what about you?
Yeah, I made The Misfits as my thesis film at my MFA program at Stanford. Beautiful. And I was just really passionate about doing something about women in STEM, and tried to think of a visual way to do that in an exciting way. Mm-hmm. So when I learned about The Misfits, this all-girls robotics team in San Francisco, I was super excited, and I went to watch them give a demo at Maker Faire. And when I saw them just speaking to these young kids and showing them how their robot worked, it got me hooked, and I was immediately a fan of them. And I was like, okay, I want to follow them. So I got to follow them for their whole robotics season, and it was really fun.
That's incredible. I love that. And also, are you from California? So do you have any relationship with San Francisco prior to this, or?
Just from being in school, an undergrad at Stanford, and then also grad school.
Got you.
I'm from LA, or Hong Kong originally, but grew up in LA.
Got you. Wonderful. Yeah. So again, thank you all so much for being with us. I wanted to talk with you, everyone, more broadly about why you were drawn to a story about women scientists. And I know, Sharon, this sort of is a little bit of a double, because you did the feature Picture a Scientist, which is at the festival, and then you have the Scientist versus Dartmouth. But what really brought you to want to talk about women working in this field?
I guess I can start. I actually have a background in science. I'm a forest ecologist by training, and
very cool.
So it was funny though, because like
oh no, looks like she may have dropped off from internet issues. Hopefully she'll be able to rejoin us. Oh gosh, the virtual world. Ellie, do you want to pick up and with the same question, and then hopefully she'll be able to come back in?
Yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned, I went to Stanford for both undergrad and grad school. Mm-hmm. And I think just being in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, I'm just always thinking about the representation of like women in STEM, and how I just don't see that many in media, even though there are women working in engineering and in STEM. And so I wanted to just shine a light on young women who are doing engineering, and hopefully make it so that other young women could get inspired and get involved at a younger age. And I think partially it was inspired by the fact that throughout my like high school, like elementary school, high school, all of that, I loved science and engineering and math and all of that. But for some reason, I never thought of joining a robotics team or like pursuing that as a career or as a major. So I think if somebody watches this and sees the girls doing robotics, having so much fun, and decides that they want to do it too, that would be like the greatest gift.
Yeah, that's incredible. I did robotics I had a tech class in high school. Oh no, so sorry. I am getting a call, but now I'm not. So I did robotics very quickly in high school, but I remember being so nervous that I wasn't going to be able to get it right that I kind of, I said that my robot would be able to turn based on seeing a color. But what I did was I just placed the colors where I knew the robot would turn. And I was like, this is my project. So not the best. But so seeing these girls actually really do it was really incredible.
That's awesome.
So Sharon, so sorry for that you came out for a second, but if you want to keep going, you're a forest ecologist by training. So
yeah, right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm a forest ecologist by training. I never experienced the kinds of harassment or discrimination that the subjects of the Dartmouth film did. Mm-hmm. But I do know that feeling, you're young, you're vulnerable, you're trying to like navigate your career, and you don't want to rock the boat. And so I was like drawn to the tension in that story. And that's also, frankly, really common. Like the same elements play out over and over again in media.
Yeah.
I've worked on TV shows where I've not been promoted, or I know I'm paid less than somebody who's, doing the same job, who's a man. And it's really tough. And so like the themes, like, I guess what's interesting about scientists in particular is that there is this sort of thing, everybody says, oh, science is unbiased. Like it's just this pure pursuit. Mm-hmm. And, but when you really dig in, you realize that's not true at all. And so that's this like inherent tension in the sciences that I think was really interesting to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. And I think that, that's coming out more and more, when we look at some older scientific studies, and we really are starting to see, the bias in there. And then one of our features at the festival, Coded Bias, really jumps into talking about how that enters into algorithms, and it comes in, in all of the different levels.
Yeah.
Claire, I want to talk to you about, why, I know that you sort of came at this maybe from wanting to tell this mother-daughter relationship, but what made you want to talk about a woman who, a woman scientist, a medical doctor?
I think it always been this. She always was like a doctor working in a hospital. So I think it really fits well for me because it's someone who has a position, like she has responsibilities, like she knows how to deal with things. So it was like really, for me, like it was really important that she worked in the medical issue, and like her career was brilliant. Like she's good at it, and she has she's not constrained by someone else. Like because I see so much time, like as a woman, they are more nurse than doctor when you make a film or something like that. And for me, she was not.
Right.
It was not possible because she, the character is also really into, I don't know how to say that, but into the control. She's kind of control freak, kind of. Mm-hmm. The versus that she's good at it. She can't. She like to keep everything like she like doing things, and she knows what she's doing. Mm-hmm. So that's why after all, I think like because I've been studying math, so maybe because when you're talking all, I'm like, yeah, me too, I love it. And most of the time when you say that, when like people see that now I'm writing and I'm directing, I'm doing like films, they think that I have been studying arts or, writing, because in France, when you do your baccalaureate, when you are in high school, you can either it can be into literature or into scientist or into and I think it's kind of unfair. People are like, oh, sure, you have been studying literature. I'm like, no, I did like maths, specialty maths.
Yeah.
So maybe I feel closer to like this kind of character when I write them more than, oh, I'm writing about a mother writer. No.
Right.
So maybe that's why she's this kind of character.
I love that. That's incredible. Yeah, this idea of like segmenting people out based on what they're interested in, and there are so many wonderful like women scientists who are writers and storytellers and who are making these movies, and we love seeing them. I want to just talk to you really quickly about the idea of bringing in this environmental obstacle in your film, Claire, and sort of where you came to this idea that, the toxicity of the air and the pollution in the air, and where that story came from.
Okay, I think it came from different parts. First of all, when I moved to Paris, I was writing my other short film was happening into a forest. And after 6 years in Paris, I was writing it to like a mother-daughter, like contained into a tour, like a tour, and with like air problems. So maybe I was feeling a bit like oppressed by the city. That's the main problem.
Yeah.
First of all, I thought like, okay, maybe I'm writing something about something I feel also.
Yeah.
But because in Paris you have a lot of pollution, and sometimes you have to do, only few cars can I would say that can drive, and not another one because it's too polluted. Not right now, because with COVID there is like less everything.
Right.
But before this COVID year, there were like a lot of episodes like that, and for me it was like a great metaphor to the kind of what's going on into the air between like two people, like in the relationship, what can exist, because there is love for sure, but sometimes love is polluted.
Yeah.
It's kind of toxic. So that's why like everything was kind of bring together.
That's great. Yeah. And I also really like, being able to see this is a story that I've heard from folks I know who work in the medical fields and who are also parents, this sort of extra anxiety with their kids because of what they've seen at work. So I think that's really powerful to be able to see that on screen. So thank you so much for that story. So Ellie, I want to talk a little bit to you about your relationship with the girls. They are just all so exciting and interesting. And what was it like working with them and following them?
Yeah, I'm just like their biggest fan.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I just think they're gonna take over the world and lead us to a better place. I really love these girls, and I'm super inspired by them. I was really grateful that I got to spend, before starting filming with them, I got to spend the summer just following them around at their meetings in their off season, going to competitions with them in the off season, and really getting to know them first before really starting to film. And so I think if there were any nerves about the camera being around, that all got like washed away after a few times of me being there, like just with my camera doing test shoots and stuff. Right. And they're so focused on the building of the robot that like they forget that I'm there half the time, I think. Except when I'm like trying to really get in there. Yeah. But they were so welcoming and treated me like another member of the team. And the mentors were wonderful too. And their families welcomed me with open arms as well. So I just got really lucky with this group of girls, and I will be rooting for them for the rest of their lives.
And I love how they're already giving back to girls younger than them, Yeah. Like what you said earlier, if people see this and a girl wants to go into robotics, it's amazing because there is absolutely that inspirational feeling, and these girls already are aware of that, and they're already giving back, which is so incredible to see.
Yeah.
I love that. And then switching topics a little bit here over to Sharon, one of and which sort of brings us to a little bit, obviously the really difficult and like darker side of the science industry for a lot of women. What I noticed that I thought was so powerful about your film is that everything was so calculated. And it was this pattern. And it was happening from people who study the brain and study behavior, And so
it's pretty messed up.
It's horrible. And I mean, obviously it's just, it's atrocious, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about bringing that story and bringing that pattern onto the screen. And just how you saw that show up and how you ended up noticing that. Yeah.
It was really interesting. Yeah, it is. It's very dark, obviously, but it was interesting, talking to all of the different women, because we got to interview all of the women who aren't Jane Does from the lawsuit. So all the women who are named, and that's the majority, like the vast majority of the women. And they all had these like similar stories, and they all like, at the time, the professors were really good about isolating them all. Yeah. And so there were things that I couldn't even put in the film about, like, the professors would be like, oh, you should be friends with this person, kind of, and like pair one girl who's sort of a target, or one woman who's a target, with somebody who was like neutral, who they weren't pursuing, who was sort of an ally and to the professor. And they'd sort of try to pair these women off in such a way where they didn't really talk to one another. And that was just like, it was just pure psychological manipulation.
Right. Absolutely.
And coming from people who know exactly what they're doing. And so that really struck me. So like the first cut of the film was a lot longer, of course, because it always is. But it was really just like sort of these women backing one another up with these similar stories where it's just this buildup of dread. And I remember showing it to my producer, Ian Chaney, who's the co-director of Picture a Scientist. And he was like, you know, this just seems like it's like somebody called, I think it was in the lawsuit, they called it a 21st century Animal House. And he's like, you know, this could be called 21st century Animal House. It's just a list of grievances. And I think at that point I was like, oh yeah, maybe less is more. Like maybe just a few of these really interesting, like calculated examples are more effective than just having this like intense buildup of like constant, you know, stories. And so that's what we ended up doing, is we really stripped back and just like focused on a few things that resonated between the different women. But yeah, it was really hard to hear all those stories. And
absolutely.
And know that those professors were doing this for generations of women in their lab. Like it wasn't just, you know, it was just really crazy how long they were able to do this for.
Yeah. And I think it's a really important story, you know, just because it's always really important to be listening to women's stories who are coming forward about sexual harassment and everything that they experience. But I think that it's a really important story because there is a little bit of a culture where people think like, oh, the people who are sexually harassed and people don't know what they're doing, you know, and like they're from a different time or all of this kind of stuff. But, you know, this story is just like, no, they absolutely know what they're doing. They study this. This is their job. And like, so I thought that was a really important story to be on screen for sure. But I wanted to ask the groups how you feel about, you know, telling the future of like telling stories about women in STEM on screen, and also maybe some of what you see from the future of women in STEM based on the experiences you had with the folks that you followed or in the research that you did for your films. So if anybody wants.
I'm so sorry. I just have a question. Finally, like, what does it mean, women in STEM?
Oh, so sorry. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and maths. Okay. So when I say STEM, it's really just sort of like that whole field, and, you know, kind of bringing all of those together because they're all linked in terms of topic, but then also because there are fewer women in those fields because they've been kept out of those fields. So that's sort of what I mean by that. Thank you so much for asking. But yeah, if someone wants to talk to sort of like what they see for the future.
I guess I'll say something. I mean, from the women that that I was able to work with for the Scientists versus Dartmouth, they're all like really passionate about what they do. And it gave me a lot of hope to see, like, even after these experiences that they've had, they're like determined to shake things up and make an impact on cognitive science. Or I think in Vasiki's case, she might end up kind of moving towards activism, and something to do with AI. I don't really know. Like, she's going to do big things though. So I feel like ultimately I was frustrated to see that, like, even now, like, speaking up and putting your name on issues like this, it does have a consequence for these women. And they do feel kind of iced out at Dartmouth, the ones who are still there. So it's really hard to see that. But I think that they are still going to do amazing work. I hope that it becomes less of a stigma and that you can, speak up and not be like punished career-wise for saying this kind of thing. Right. And I think the more people speak up, the better, then it's like you can't punish an individual when everybody's doing it.
Yeah. And I think telling these stories is, a really big part of that. And them all, really coming together and being able to come forward together. So
I don't know if it will answer to the question, but what I would imagine for the future is that it's not a question anymore. It's like, because I'm a bit surprised that, but I'm happy about that my film is considered in this program for this reason.
Yeah.
And for me, it was not a question to decide it. It's like the main character, she is a scientist. It's not like it was not something like kind of special, or like really particular. For me, it was like, sure, she's, and she's very good. Like it's natural. There is no questioning about that. So what I would love is that it's no question about like being good into math or writing, being a scientist, and then write a book or like write song, and then like it's just like liking having mind complete and like be okay about like what we like and what we like doing. It's like when you were saying that, Sharon or Ellie, about like seeing people who are like really passionate about what they do. So, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. The hope is to not have to continually talking about women in STEM, because women will just be in STEM. I love that.
Yeah, totally echo that sentiment. I think also I'm just super grateful to be in this program with your films, with each other's films, and the fact that Athena Film Festival exists and is spotlighting this, and that we're all women making these films about women in STEM. But in terms of the girls, I really echo what Anne-Claire was just talking about. I think, yes, the girls on the team are aware of the sexism that they've faced and experienced, but they also just really own their space in the field too. And I'm really encouraged and inspired to see that, like, they're not completely burdened by the sexism that they faced, and that they're just like, we're here and we're going to be badass and we're going to beat everybody in the competition. And then the same with the younger generation. Oh no, Sharon. But same with the younger generation, like you mentioned, Corey, of the first graders in the film. Like they're like, yeah, I code. I'm a computer scientist. I'm in first grade. What of it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel really hopeful for the future.
That's wonderful. And, again, thank y'all for making these stories and for being here to talk with us. And it's just in this year where we're seeing healthcare workers and scientists and engineers be such heroes, it really feels really special to be able to spotlight women who are doing these things. So thank y'all so much. Is there anything else you want to add, or? Oh, Sharon's back. Hi, Sharon. We're just wrapping up. I just was asking if there's anything else anybody wants to add, and then we're going to close out. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for being here. And to our audience, make sure you check out the other shorts programs at the Athena Film Festival. And thank you for coming.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you.